every measurement. If that is the case, if that's what happens, if the cornerstone is the first one that's laid in order for the draw, then it's obvious to me that he is about to, he is saying this at a point when the cornerstone is about to be laid. So when is, it seems to me, very parallel to the idea that he's going to be laying the first cornerstone through his death, because at that point things change. Now, this statement that he makes in 43 and 4, what's his point about the reason why this applies to him, and what is it? How does it affect these people that he's talking to? What's his point? 43, 44.
Well, I think 43 is where he assures us that his kingdom is for all people, not just the Jews. In fact, Jesus came to the Jews, they rejected him. And so I think he's making a statement there that, okay, we don't open it to everybody.
So the reference of kingdom taken from you.
So they'd no longer be the chosen of God.
There you go. That's right. It's going to be open to everybody because you no longer are the only ones. And he's talking to these leaders, and that's where he is focusing. And he's saying, you had a chance. You were the ones that I put my loving kindness on, and I'm taking it away. Not that you can't ever be a part, but you can't be the place or the ones that are the beloved of God, excluding everybody else. Now it's going to happen, that others are going to be involved.
It's also, he's saying that there's no human that can change the outcome. Not the stone that's falling on them and the ones that are falling on it, and I don't get that either. But.
Well, that's the part I was going to ask you next. Whoever falls on this stone will be broken. Now, what's the stone, obviously, is what? Jesus. So whoever falls on him will be broken. What's the reference? My idea. It's written across your forehead, I think.
I think if you trip, or if this trips you up,
yep,
it's gonna, you don't have access to it. It's gonna be a stumbling block.
Yes.
For you.
When I read this, when I read this, I always go back to my about 2 to 3 month study with some people from Jehovah's Witness Church. And we spent 2 or 3 weeks at this point. And they said, well, listen, let's move past it and we'll come back to it because you'll get it. And I said, no, we're not moving past this. If you don't get this, there's nothing else in the future. They stumble at Jesus. Because in their teaching, Jesus is not God. He's just not. And therefore, not being God, to me, is a very good illustration of them stumbling at the stone of Jesus, the corner. And so that's part of it. Now, the other part, whoever it falls on, I don't know. Is there any way to connect this at all to his coming statement about Jerusalem being destroyed?
I've only got to think that if the stone is going to fall on them, it is while it's being placed. So that would be the Jews.
Right. Okay, that could be.
And thereafter, after it's set in place, anything after that, they could stumble too. But that's not necessarily the Jews. That could be Gentiles that stumble on Jesus.
That's interesting. It could be. So it could be that he's saying the Gentiles stumble over it after it's been set, and the Jews stumble or are ground by it because it's set upon them.
But that's the latter part of the sentence. I would think that would be reversed the way I would think of it.
Okay.
I would think in reference to what John said as far as the Jews, that would be as they were placing, as you said, as they were placing the stone down, and then the falling on it is after its place, so it seems to be backwards to me. It looks to me as if the fall of John's thought that who falls, on whom it falls, that should be first.
Well,
It should
yes,
be
you're,
reversed.
yes. Mhm.
So I wonder about that. I can see the point though.
I think maybe it is, well, it does seem backwards because if it's there, of course the idea, it might be all Jewish. Think about this. Could the first part, whoever falls on this stone, reference the fact that it was in the prophets and they didn't see it? And then whomever it falls on, once it's set, it's there. And anybody after that, in other words, the Jews could have seen it and should have seen it in the prophecy. And they just didn't want it.
To me, it's saying whether I reject you or you reject me, either way, I win.
That's a good point. That could very well be it.
He was talking about when the fall of Jerusalem happened. No family would have connection to the original Jewish law.
That's true. Mhm.
It would, if they couldn't accept Jesus as the person prophesied of, everything that they knew was destroyed. It was be ground because their prophets would be gone, their different tribes would be gone, that could no longer connect with their heritage.
Go ahead.
So reading here, I think it talks about the person falling on Christ as believing in Christ and being broken through repentance. And then the stone crushing would be a judgment-based indication.
I mean, that would be a way that could be interpreted too. All of these are good. Verse 49, 44, or 45 that is, in talking about, they perceived that he was speaking about them. Now, what I think is going on, I prefer to land on the point that this is referencing the Jewish people. Whatever it means is referencing the Jewish people. They're stumbling over it, and they're being crushed by it. It may just be two different ways of saying basically the same thing. But his point is that I am removing the Jews from special status before God. And that's the whole point. And they figured this out. But they really understood it through the leaders themselves. Because what's happening right now in this whole section is Jesus and the leaders. That's where we are. In fact, it's going to carry right on through, certainly through chapter 23. And so we go to the next part then in chapter 22. Now notice, at the end of 21, they wanted to kill him, but the multitudes didn't go for it. One of the fascinating things to me in the crucifixion week is the play back and forth between the multitudes were on his side and they wanted to kill him but they couldn't, to the time it started out when he entered the city and everybody's worshiping him, the triumphal entry, and eventually they're screaming to have him killed. In just a period of 4 days, he went from being honored as a king entering the city to being crucified on the cross. And these are the multitudes I'm talking about. To me, that's an interesting dynamic that occurs. And how it occurs is interesting, I think, in the background. It appears that the Jewish leaders are manipulating the situation somehow.
Well, I think you're totally right. I mean, you have to think even at Jesus' trial, basically they were instructing their witnesses that basically, that will make him look bad, et cetera, so on and so forth. And it was basically the Jewish leaders, historically speaking and looking at it, it's even noted that possibly the whole council wasn't even there. It was at night.
Right.
It was done in a fashion that wasn't normal.
That's right.
And then, of course, you know, basically all you have to do is hire a couple of cedars to get in the crowd, and basically the crowd riled up, and you can make the crowd do whatever.
And I think that's exactly what happened. I think you're right. So that dynamic that happens here, I think, is interesting, which is why I think Jesus is dealing with them the day before. Now, chapter 22. Now we have the wedding feast. Now, what is the difference in these two parables? They seem to be extremely close to one another. You have a marriage feast in 22, and he invites people to come. Tell those who are invited, I've prepared my dinner, everything's ready, come to the feast. They made light of it, and everyone went to his own farm, another to his business. The rest seized the servants, treated them spitefully, killed them. But the king heard about it. He was furious. He sent his armies, destroyed the murderers, burned the city. Then he said, the wedding's ready. Those who were invited are not worthy. So go to the highways and find as many as you can to invite to the wedding. They went out and gathered up people they found. They gathered together whom they found both bad and good. And the wedding was filled with guests, and the king came in. He saw a man there who did not have a wedding garment. How did you get in here? And he was speechless, and they bound him hand and foot and put him into outer darkness. Many are called, but few are chosen. Okay? At the same, apparently in the same setting, scenario, you get the wicked vine dressers who destroyed the son, thinking they could get what was left. And then you have the wedding feast, where the people are destroyed, and the one in charge takes one out who was invited and sends him out of darkness because he didn't have on the proper garb. What's going on in the wedding feast parable? Thinking about how all of this is connected, because in verse 15, that's when they started the plot to kill him.
Well, I think just like the vine dressers in the vineyard, basically there were people who were selected to be able to be a part of this honor, and they scoffed at it. And basically it wasn't something they wanted to go to and attend, but they've got a myriad of excuses from I've got a new donkey, or I'm newly married, and et cetera, so on and so forth. And basically the king then, at that point, is willing to open the doors to anyone, strangers on the street, both good and bad. And it's basically just like we read earlier, basically God kept trying to get the Jewish people to do things, basically as even stated in this parable, people that he sent out, the prophets, which is who gets lives, were killed. And then basically it's the same scenario to where they were God's special guests, but now God just is like, okay, anybody can come to the wedding, it doesn't matter what background you're from, where you live, anything.
So the new system that's being brought in kicks out the old system of special people chosen by blood and genetics versus people who choose to be. Now, what is going on with this guy who in verse 11 didn't have on a wedding garment, and yet he got in?
Well, I think it goes back to many that day shall say, Lord, Lord, and I will declare to them I never knew you. Basically, anybody can show up and say they're a Christian, but there's a difference between saying you're a Christian and being a Christian. And I think that's the case here. So he was trying to say he was a wedding guest, but obviously it was apparent that he wasn't.
It's also connected to the scribes and Pharisees who were very into wearing the robes and the bands around them, the
Phylactery.
So they were dressing the part, but they weren't acting the part. So here's someone who comes in not dressed, but he's there for the right reason. He didn't reject coming because he had something better to do.
Well, the thing is he's cast out. He's not accepted.
Then he's cast out anyway. He
How about you can't sneak in, you gotta be sincere.
Maybe
It's like when
something
two
there.
teams play and you're rooting for whoever's winning, and it's like, oh, I'm not really a fan of either. Just gonna go with the winner.
Whoever's winning.
So what are garments? What are the garments? I mean, is there any other reference to garments in,
Well, there is in Revelation,
yeah,
and,
they were dipped in blood even,
Mhm.
right?
right, I think the concept of the garment here is to come to, if you're invited to this wedding feast and you have to wear a certain thing to get in, that's the requirement. So it's obviously a reference to not only a look, but a character, a nature.
I think of the parable of the sons who said he was going to do his father's will, but he didn't, and one that said he wasn't, but he couldn't do it.
Okay?
So, he went to the feast because he said he was going to do it, but he had to see his heart.
But it didn't follow in properly. Mhm.
There's also the description of someone who comes in dressed in fine garments and gold and silver,
James.
given the preferred place.
Right.
And we can't do that. We can't judge people because of their outside quality, and Christ won't.
I think you could even go a little deeper and say that the garment is Christ. That's when you're baptized in Christ, you put on Christ.
There is the thing Paul wrote about in Hebrews, I think it is, where longing to be clothed,
No, that's 2 Corinthians.
2 Corinthians.
Yeah, chapter 5. He longs to be clothed with the habitation that is from above. And releasing the garments that are here and taking the ones that are coming. Yeah, that's,
What's that
A
reference?
wedding garment would have been, according to this footnote, something that the king would have provided for all the guests.
well, no, that's true too, and that's what I'm trying to,
This
yeah.
particular guest just feel like he didn't have to wear one. And he showed up without it, and that wasn't acceptable.
See, that's what I think is going on. I think that's the key to this. I think the garment was provided by the leader of the feast, and so he was invited, that's no problem, but you refused to wear this. Now we're back to refuse to be the person you need to be. I think it's 2 Corinthians 5, isn't it? Verse 2. 2 Corinthians 5:2.
I can't help but think it reminds me of people today that say, I want to follow God, but
Mm.
I'll do it the way I want to.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that could very well be it. And so the whole point is, how, this connects well with the chief cornerstone. The measurement's going to be made from the corner. And it's going to be, and if he decides, if he is the one who decides, then you're going to wear this. That's what you got to wear. You can't make up your own costume, if you will.
In verse 12, the very last line, and he was speechless.
Yep.
We've all had that gotcha moment
Mhm.
when we have done something wrong and now it's come to light, and you have that moment of freezing where you know your hand. I think Jesus is telling them,
Mhm.
I got you.
That's it.
And you have no reply, you have no excuse, you have no reason, because you have the prophets in the Old Testament, and so on. So,
And these two parables are told. The first one, they were afraid of the multitude. But after he told the second one, that didn't even matter anymore. Verse 15. Now we're going to kill him. That's it. So they are the kinds of people, as you remember, that don't make a whole lot of common sense. For instance, in the first actions after the church was established and the man was healed, they all got together and said, okay, we can't deny that this happened. How are we going to deal with it? We'll tell them stop. Just tell them stop. Well, the fact that he was healed, which is incredible, they couldn't deny it. But they didn't want anything to do with it. And so that's how they are. That's who they are.
I think one of the biggest ironies of all time that I've always laughed at and had humor for whatever reason, maybe is the fact that Judas, takes the 30 pieces of silver and basically it's the blood money. It's That's right. Consent to his murder. And then yet when he tries to give it back to them, like, oh, we can't take it, that's blood money, you know? It's like,
It can't
well, you
go
just
back.
murdered a guy, you won't
That's
take
it.
back $30.
That's exactly right. That's a good
Going
point.
back to that first parable,
Mhm.
the way that the tenant farmers acted, thought they could kill the son and still inherit the property. How silly is that? You know?
Right, because the man who sent him is still alive. It's still his property. Yeah. But none of this makes any
Doesn't
sense.
make any sense.
None. And there's a way in which that's what we're supposed to understand. It doesn't make any sense not to follow Jesus.
Could we entertain the thought process that the gentleman received the wedding garments and he wore them and then he took them off? And because they asked him, how did you get in without the wedding garments? I mean,
Good point.
You want to think he snuck in, but maybe not. Maybe he walked them in and then he has gone astray.
That's so it would reference those who come in and then leave. That's a very good point. That very well could be it. The point being, and here is the point that I'm wanting us to get, on this day before crucifixion, Jesus is setting himself up as we looked last time at his authority being questioned. Now he's saying, I am the authority, I'm the chief cornerstone, and we're going to decide who is faithful as a wedding guest and who gets to come in and who gets to stay, and how, if what Ron is saying is true, which makes sense, and how you live, you got to stay in that. So the whole concept of authority is what's being addressed here. And this is the whole point. The day before the crucifixion, it's all about authority. And even on the day you're going to receive, he questions Pilate. Pilate says, he said, you can't have the authority unless I give it to you. Right? So beginning on Wednesday for the next 3 days, authority is a key issue in this crucifixion week. Okay?
I think it's funny down to the very last 46 that after that, no one asked any more questions. Not only have they rejected him, they don't even care enough to ask him to try to figure out what the problem is or who he is. He is dead to them.
You're talking about at the end of 22.
Yeah.
Yeah. They don't even ask me any more questions. But it's because every time they do, he shuts them up. And he does here for sure. All right? So after addressing this issue, now then they're going to plot to kill him, verse 15. And they sent their own disciples, verse 16, with the Herodians to say this. Who are the Herodians? Anybody know who the Herodians are?
Very worldly people.
Why are they called Herodians?
Well, one or both of two reasons. Either they are the family of the Herodians, or they have beliefs similar to the Herodians. But either way, they are connected part and parcel with the Herodians.
Support Herod.
Well, wait.
If this says not member of Herod's family or Herod's soldiers, partisans loyal to Herod's dynasty,
That's it.
that they were in collusion with their bitter rivals, the Pharisees, shows the animosity Jesus generated. So the Herodians and Pharisees didn't like each other anyway.
That's the missing point here. That is huge.
They hated each other.
They were enemies. The Pharisees, we throw stones at the Pharisees, but they were, of all the Jewish leaders, they were actually the good ones. They were the fair-minded ones. And the Herodians, anything but. They were very worldly. But what's happening here brings, the friend of the enemy, and my enemy is my friend. And then here we have enemies become the best of friends. And this is seen over in Mark chapter 3, early on in Mark's gospel when they begin to plot Jesus' death. It's, again, Pharisees and Herodians plotting together. And that's very, very, very interesting.
Is this would these Herodians are they Jewish people, number one? Are they Jewish people who have decided to side with the Roman authorities?
They're Jews.
Yeah. They're Jews who have who have chosen the Jewish the Roman side of things, supporting Herod the leader, and the Pharisees who don't want that. They're the zealots who are trying to get them thrown out. Okay, you got all these factions working together. All right, and so, but now the Herodians, it doesn't. My first thought was maybe they're trying to one up the Pharisees, when in fact it seems like it's okay. You took your best shot, now we'll take one. You tried to knock him down, now it's our turn. And the question was, basically, do you pay Caesar taxes or not? Well, now what would their answer be? The Herodians.
I think
They would. You pay them. Because we're on the Roman side. We have to do that. That's what we do. We pay them. But Jesus said, let me see your tax money. You're hypocrites too. Whose image is it? Of course, they said Caesar's. And the right answer is, render therefore to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, to God the things that are God. They heard these words, they marveled, left him, and went their way. Because it was so common. It was just, to me, it makes perfect sense. And they were people, we have to understand, the people who are opposing Jesus, every one of them are so colored in their view of what they want that they don't see any other thing. And every time Jesus points out something, it's almost as though they had never seen it. It never occurred to them. And he brought it up. And now they have to face it. And so they just went away. They took off. So now we've had Pharisees, we've had the Herodians, now we have the Sadducees coming on board. And the Sadducees are taking their own point. The Sadducees are people who believe that there is no resurrection. They don't believe in the future in that way at all. No angels, no resurrection.
That's why they're sad.
They're Sadducee. You know the song? I don't want to be a Sadducee.
Did they just believe in themselves?
You know, I really have not studied them enough to know. I think that they simply believed in the Jewish system. Period. But interestingly enough, you don't believe in angels, and yet they're not God. Maybe they are deists.
What would they say about Jacob and all the...
Right, and the ladder and
Yeah.
the angels, yeah, that's just a dream. Wasn't it fantasy? So the Sadducees come on board now. Again, same day, Wednesday, and they're bringing up this whole idea of the not lever, but is it levirate marriage? What's the name of there was a Levirate marriage. Okay, if your brother dies without a child to his name, then the brother that's still alive takes the wife and raises the first child to his name, so his name doesn't die. That's just the law of the Jews. And so they bring up this impossible scenario where there are 7, and last of all the woman dies, still nobody, no child raised. Whose wife will she be in the resurrection? Well, in the face of it, what's the ridiculous part of the whole story? Right on the face.
Those hypotheticals.
Well, yeah, it's a hypothetical. It's a straw man that you set up as though it's some great thing. They ask a question about the resurrection. They themselves don't believe in the resurrection. They just don't. That's fascinating to me. I don't know, what is the point? Are they wanting to talk about the resurrection? They want to talk about Jewish law and what the standing will be. It seems to me maybe they're saying, well, since this makes no sense, how can this person, whose wife is she? Therefore, there is no afterlife. Because that question can't be solved. I mean, this is the strange setup.
Well, I think they're trying to make the point that there is no resurrection.
Yeah, me too. That's how I read it.
That's my point. Because this proves that there's no resurrection.
Exactly.
I think it would have made, the phrase would have made more sense if it said, if there's really a resurrection, then, I think it would make more sense saying it that way.
Right, that's the emphasis of it, I think. And their point being, since this scenario cannot be fixed, there obviously is no resurrection. Because if there were a resurrection, you're going to have to decide whose wife she is. That's their point. Well, he said, you're mistaken. You don't know the scriptures. Why? Well, there's no marrying and giving in marriage and resurrection. Oh. See, it's real simple.
One thing that's bothered me, especially with this, is the Jews believe in monogamy. And so if the brothers are married and they take this woman, doesn't that violate monogamy?
Well, yes, but at the same time, the Jews have always had a connection to multiple wives, their whole system. And whether they still, it very well could be that the basic tenet of Judaism today is monogamy. But back then it wasn't.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why you have the basic fundamentals and instructions for elders and deacons.
Yes.
Because it was very common back then for them to still have, and then you have to look at it, some people's like, well, they couldn't have, that would have been wrong. Well, no, God, Jesus wouldn't have came and said, okay, now all the wives you have to divorce them.
Mm-hmm.
That would have been wrong there. So it would at least lasted through that first century.
Yeah, I think so, and it's a bleeding, emerging time. Okay, so what's going on is, notice how deftly Jesus deals with the situation. He and both of their two things, angels and resurrection, they don't believe in. He handles both of them in one simple statement. In the resurrection, there's no giving marriage, but they're like angels. In one statement, he took care of both things that are the key points to the Sadducees' belief system. And so, he said, didn't you read your own scriptures? Verse 32, I'm the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob. He's not the God of the dead, he's the God of the living. What they should have seen in their own scriptures is that if God is God of these people, he is the God of these people, then they are alive. And so there is life after death. It doesn't say he was the God.
The issue is, is that what the issue is versus was?
That's right.
Okay.
That's right. That's exactly right. That's the whole point of the text. In fact, that's the point of when Moses asks who God is. What's your name? He said, I am. That's his name. I am. The point is, whenever you talk about me, there I am. That's me. Always in the present. Never in the past, never in the future. Always in the present. And that's what he's saying here. He is the God. He continues to be the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Now this time, the multitudes heard it. And they are astonished at his teaching. Now, we're about to close, but I want to get this next one in. Verse 34. The Pharisees heard that he had silenced the Sadducees. And so they said, oh boy, see, those are rivals anyway. They fight each other anyway. I think it's Acts 23, where Paul's on trial and he realized you got Jews who are Sadducees and Pharisees there. So he brought up the resurrection to get them warring at each other, to get them off topic. And so they said, here's our chance to get him. So we're going to ask a question. They blew it, but we can come back, we can fix it. And theirs is, tell us what the great commandment is. And of course, the answer is, as we know. So, the Pharisees and the Sadducees and the Herodians are all trying to figure out a way to get him. And this is the day before he is going on trial before the Romans and the Jewish leaders. And so what you have is this possible that they are at this point trying to find something that they can use in the trial? And he just keeps coming up roses. They can't find anything That's why they keep asking these questions.
What do you think they were expecting the answer to be? I mean, this, to me, this doesn't look like they put that much effort into their question. What were they what were they wanting him to say?
I think,
I mean, doesn't that just seem like the right answer?
yeah, that's my point.
But why wouldn't they know that was the right answer?
Well, it's the same reason you have people today that sit there and don't think baptism is necessary or think that being gay is okay.
No, it's not. This says love God. That's all it says.
Right. I think it's because the Pharisees were so focused on the minutia of keeping laws
The laws they had created.
that they had either written or interpreted in certain ways, that they wanted to see if he, like they, would pick out these important little trinkets, these individual things. So is it more important, for instance, to wash your hands before eating? Or is it more important to make sure you don't work on the Sabbath?
Don't look at your reflection.
Don't look at your reflection, whatever.
Could their silence, saying that he quietened the Sadducees and then he quietened the Pharisees, could that indicate that they thought they had the evidence at that point, so they just...
No, I don't think so. I think it indicates that they knew they didn't have anything and they ran away, and now they're going to have to bring up liars at the trial. That's the only thing I can figure. So I think that's what they were looking for, specific law. And he said, wait a minute, it's really not the law. It's really 2 points that take care of the whole law. And they didn't get that. All right. We're going to try to move to Thursday pretty quickly.
Hey, John.
We've got a lot to do in Wednesday still. Wednesday was a full day.
Oh, sorry about that.
Seems to me. Y'all better be checking.
How you
it out,
doing?
see if I done right and stuff.
Hey, Eric.
I still don't know what day it is.
You
You fly out, you lose, you fly back.
The only thing I'm not sure about is what's
I think I was
the
gonna stand
transition
up and
Tuesday, Wednesday. I get Wednesday to Thursday, but I don't get Tuesday, Wednesday yet.
You're doing well.
Hey, John, good to see you there, buddy.
You did well. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
No problem.
I had an interesting experience out at Bear Valley. Before every song,
This is an important hallway here.
the song leader would say,
Go ahead.
"Let us worship."
Wow.
I thought that it was so simple,
That is cool.
but it's like, we forget why we're singing. Some people don't know why we're singing, but they on the video screens, they have the verse, or the song you're gonna sing. Underneath they have where it is in the song. And, I mean, such little things are just very helpful.
Well, I'll do it. They chose here not to do the wearing the book thing. Because we don't use the book, don't have enough books.
Yeah.
It's just rosy cheek. I noticed that.
We've got a bag,
Is that what it is?
so if you see us leave, we're doing this.
I thought
Unless
maybe,
you weren't sleeping.
I thought some woman with lipstick was kissing on me.